So, welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, you and I are going to do something, well, highly unusual. I mean, we're acting as literary detectives today.
Forensic analysts, really.
Yeah, exactly. Because we received a file for today's deep dive, and it's 31 pages long.
Right.
You open it up, and page 1 is this, just stunning, intricately designed Arabic book cover.
It really is beautiful.
Heavy on the green, striking geometric patterns, just dense with information.
So dense.
And then, you scroll to page 2.
And nothing.
Completely, unequivocally blank. Just a white rectangle on the screen.
Okay.
Page 3, blank. Page 4, blank. 30 consecutive pages of absolute nothingness.
It is the ultimate anomaly for what we do here.
Yeah.
We're in the business of distillation, right?
Taking massive amounts of data.
Taking all that data and finding the signal in the noise. But this time we have the opposite problem.
Yeah.
We have almost zero signal and a just deafening amount of silence.
My literal first thought when I opened the file was, okay, the scanner jammed.
Oh, for sure.
Someone messed up the PDF compile. Let's just email them back and ask for the real file.
Because it's obviously a glitch.
Right. Someone fed the cover through the machine. The feeder grabbed 30 blank sheets of printer paper by accident. And, well, here we are.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question this is a technical error. Nobody intentionally publishes a book on theology with a beautifully rendered cover and then sells you 30 pages of empty paper.
No, of course not. But before I hit delete, I found myself just staring at that cover.
It pulls you in.
It does. Because when you know the rest of the book is missing, your relationship with the cover completely changes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Usually a cover is just a door. You turn the handle, you walk through it, and you never look at the door again because you're busy looking at the room.
You're reading the actual text.
Right. But when you open the door and there is no room, you suddenly turn back and start obsessing over the hinges.
I love that analogy.
You start noticing the exact shade of the paint, the weight of the doorknob.
Because the container is suddenly all you have. When we are denied the author's actual arguments, the chapters, the pacing of their thoughts, their conclusions.
We're locked out.
Exactly. We are forced to extract every single drop of meaning, context, and visual data from the presentation itself.
Which brings us to the actual mission for today. We have exactly one image.
Just the cover.
The cover of an Arabic book. The main title translates to Belief in Allah.
Right.
And we are going to spend this time unpacking how much heavy lifting a single page of graphic design and metadata can do before a single argument is even made.
Let's do it.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the text. Because my immediate reaction to the text on this cover was that it is incredibly rigid.
Rigid is a really good word for it.
Yeah.
A book cover is essentially a highly concentrated piece of communication.
Right, it has to be fast.
Exactly. It has to tell the reader exactly what they're getting into, establish authority, and set the tone, all in a fraction of a second.
It's a tall order.
It is. And if we break down the primary text translated from this cover, we see a very deliberate, very rigid hierarchy of information.
So standing the very top of the cover, there is a banner.
Yes.
It's written in this elegant, flowing Arabic script, and it translates to belief in the light of the Quran and Sunnah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, before we even get to the words, let's talk about the concept of a banner.
It's structural.
Right, it's sitting above the main title. It's the very first thing your eye hits if you read from top to bottom.
And what it's doing there is establishing the rules of engagement. This is a methodological statement.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, by stating, in the light of the Quran and Sunnah, the author is immediately establishing the boundaries and the sources of their argument.
Right.
For context for you listening, the Quran is the central religious text of Islam, and the Sunnah refers to the traditions and practices of the Prophet Muhammad.
So the absolute core texts.
Exactly. By putting this at the very top, above everything else, the cover is telling you that the arguments contained within are strictly anchored in these two foundational sources. It's a declaration of a framework.
I want to dig into the specific phrasing there. In the light of.
Okay.
Because they could have just said, based on the Quran and Sunnah.
Sure.
Or an analysis of. But in the light of does something very specific mechanically to how a reader approaches the text, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Mm-hmm.
Let's think about how light functions as a metaphor.
Okay.
Light is a clarifying agent. If you are in a dark room, the furniture's already there, the walls are already there.
Right, you just can't see them.
Exactly. The light doesn't create the room, it simply reveals it, and it allows you to navigate it without stumbling.
Oh, wow.
So by using the phrase "in the light of," The author is suggesting that the concept of belief is inherently complex.
It's tricky to navigate.
Yes, it might be a dark room. It might be a topic where people easily trip up or get lost.
So the Quran and the Sunnah aren't just being cited as footnotes.
No.
They are being positioned as the flashlight.
Exactly. It's a navigational tool. It tells the reader, hey, we are not going to be wandering around in the dark, relying on my personal opinions or abstract philosophy.
We have a guide.
We have a torch, and we're going to follow where it shines. It establishes an immediate sense of safety and authority for the target audience.
Okay, but let me push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Is it possible we are overanalyzing a very common religious phrase? I mean, in the light of is a pretty standard idiom.
That's true.
Is the designer really thinking about flashlights and dark rooms, or is it just boilerplate text?
No, that's a fair question. It's highly likely that it is a standard idiom within the genre. But here's the thing about graphic design and textual hierarchy.
Okay.
Even if the phrase is common, its placement is a choice.
Ah, I see.
They chose to elevate it above the title. They chose to put it in a sweeping calligraphic font that stretches across the entire top edge of the book.
Right, they made it unmissable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even if the phrase itself is a cliche, the design decision to make it the very first thing the reader processes is highly intentional.
It's prioritizing it.
Prioritizing methodology over the actual topic. It's saying how we are going to talk about this is just as important as what we are talking about.
I see. That makes total sense. Because right next to that banner, sitting prominently at the top left, is another structural element that feels incredibly intentional.
Yes.
It's a bright yellow box. And inside this box is the number 1.
What's fascinating here is that this is where the psychology of publishing gets really interesting.
See, to me, this yellow box is jarring.
Why is that?
Well, you have this beautiful, flowing, traditional calligraphy in the banner, and then right next to it, just a sharp, utilitarian, almost aggressively modern yellow square with a digit in it.
Right, it doesn't quite match.
No, it feels like a sticker you'd put on a piece of warehouse inventory.
But that aesthetic clash is exactly why it works. Yes, because graphic design relies on contrast to direct the human eye. The flowing script is elegant, but it blends in.
It becomes part of the background.
Exactly. But that bright yellow box with a hard numeric digit, it stops the eye dead. And it needs to, because that number 1 is a massive commitment.
How so? I mean, it was just a volume number. Like, hey, we printed a book, maybe we'll print another one.
It's much more than that. When an author or a publisher puts a 1 on a cover, they are making a psychological contract with the reader.
Okay, I'm listening.
They are saying, this book is not a self-contained unit. It is not the whole story.
It's just the beginning.
Yes, it is merely the foundation of a vast architecture of thought that we have planned out.
It's an audacious thing to do, right?
Sure.
You're assuming people are going to care enough about Volume 1 to show up for Volume 2.
It's extremely audacious. It indicates a level of supreme confidence in the material. Think about the cognitive load it asks of the reader.
Yeah.
If I hand you a standalone book, you know that by page 300, you will have the complete argument.
You're done.
Right. If I hand you Volume 1, you know you are signing up for a journey. It requires a completely different level of investment.
It completely changes how you read the text.
It does.
It reminds me of signing up for college courses. This is the 101 class.
Yes. Perfect analogy.
If you see a book labeled Belief in Allah, Volume 1, it signals that this is the prerequisite.
You have to start here.
Yeah. You can't just skip ahead to the complex, specialized debates in Volume 4. You have to secure the bedrock first.
That analogy is perfect. In any complex academic or theological framework, you cannot build a towering structure without securing the bedrock.
Right.
If you try to debate advanced jurisprudence or complex ethical dilemmas without first agreeing on the absolute foundational nature of belief, the whole conversation collapses.
You're building a house on sand.
Exactly. The one who's on this cover acts as a gatekeeper. It basically says, start here, do not sip this.
Let's talk about the title itself, which sits right in the dead center of the cover. Belief in Allah.
The Cordy.
Yeah, it doesn't get more foundational than that. It's not a poetic title. It's not trying to be clever or metaphoric.
No, it's a definitive, declarative statement. And again, look at how the visual hierarchy supports the meaning.
The size of it.
Right. The title is the largest text on the page. It is centered. It is the anchor.
Everything revolves around it.
Yes, everything else, the banner, the volume number, the author's name, revolves around this central axis.
Speaking of the author, right below the title we have Dr. Omar Suleiman Al-Ashqar.
Mm-hmm.
The inclusion of the title doctor is interesting to me.
Why is that?
Because we just talked about how the top banner established religious authority, right? The Quran and the Sunnah.
Yes.
But now we're establishing academic human authority.
And that's a crucial distinction. In many theological traditions, there is a tension between divine revelation and human interpretation.
A push and pull.
Exactly. By placing the title Dr. Co on the cover, the publisher is sending a very specific signal to the reader.
What are they saying?
They are saying, this isn't just a casual reflection by a layperson, and it isn't an unmediated religious text either.
It's scholarly.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a rigorous, studied, systematic exposition by someone who has achieved the highest level of formal academic credentialing.
It bridges the gap. It's
Yeah.
the difference between reading a personal blog post about faith and reading a peer-reviewed dissertation.
Exactly. It establishes trust. And if we look at the whole textual ecosystem we've just discussed,
Right.
the methodological banner, the commitment of the volume number, the definitive title, the academic credential, it's amazing how much heavy lifting those few lines of text are doing.
It really is.
We've got the rules, the sequence, the core topic, and the authority, all delivered in the 3 seconds it takes to glance at the cover.
It really makes you realize how much we take for granted when we just scroll through Amazon or walk through a bookstore.
We process so much without knowing it.
We think we're just looking at a title, but we are actually downloading a highly compressed thesis statement. Someone, somewhere, agonized over whether to include the word doctor or whether to make the volume number yellow or red.
They absolutely did, which is why we have to move beyond the text and look at the actual visual language of this artifact.
The graphic design.
Because as much as the text is doing, the graphic design, the colors, the geometry, the semiotics of the imagery is communicating just as loudly, but on a subconscious level.
Let's get into the semiotics. And for you listeners, when we say visual semiotics, we just mean how images and symbols function as a vocabulary.
Right, visual shorthand.
How a stop sign tells you to stop even if the word STOP isn't written on it just because of the red octagon.
A perfect definition.
Yeah.
It's the study of how visual elements carry inherent meaning. And the visual layout of this cover is incredibly striking.
It really stands out.
It doesn't use a photograph. It doesn't use a literal illustration like a painting of a landscape or a mosque.
Oh.
The entire background is a solid, completely uniform, flat green.
Why green? And I don't mean that in a why is the sky blue way.
Right, right.
I mean, mechanically, why choose a solid block of green for a book about foundational belief?
Well, there are 2 layers to this. The first is cultural, and the second is psychological.
Okay, lay it out.
Culturally, in the context of Islamic literature and history, green is not a neutral color. It is heavily saturated with historical and spiritual significance.
It has baggage in a good way.
Yes, it is traditionally associated with paradise, with life, with the Prophet himself. By choosing a solid green background, the designer is immediately wrapping the entire concept of the book in an aura of tradition.
Okay, so it's a cultural shorthand, like using red, white, and blue on an American political book.
Precisely. It sets the stage before a single word is read.
And the psychological layer.
Purely from a visual processing standpoint, green is a grounding color. It sits directly in the middle of the visible light spectrum.
Right.
The human eye doesn't have to strain to perceive it the way it does, with high-frequency colors like bright blue or low-frequency colors like deep red.
That makes sense. It feels very stable to look at.
It does.
If this background were neon pink or like aggressive red, it would completely clash with the serious foundational volume 1 tone we just established.
It would be too loud.
Yeah. The green acts as a quiet, authoritative backdrop. It doesn't scream at you, it just holds the space.
It's the visual equivalent of a deep breath. But it needs to be quiet, because the centerpiece of this cover, the element that absolutely dominates the visual hierarchy, is anything but quiet.
Okay, let's talk about the centerpiece, because here's where it gets really interesting. This is the most striking thing on the entire page.
It's impossible to ignore.
Sitting right in the lower middle section is this massive geometric medallion.
Yes.
It's an octagonal shape, 8 sides, and inside this octagon is an incredibly intricate, almost maze-like design.
It looks almost like a microchip crossed with ancient architecture, doesn't it?
Exactly. It's Arabic calligraphy, but it's not the flowing cursive kind we saw at the top of the cover in the banner.
No, it's very different.
This is rigid. It's built out of hard right angles and sharp interlocking lines.
What you are looking at is known as geometric Kufic script.
Geometric Kufic.
Yes, and it's one of the most fascinating developments in the history of typography.
How does it work? Like, why does it look so different from standard writing?
Well, It originated historically out of a physical necessity.
Oh, really?
Think about trying to carve curved, flowing letters into a brick wall or a stone mosaic.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It's incredibly difficult. So early artisans developed a way to force the Arabic alphabet onto a strict, square, grid-like matrix.
Okay, so it's a grid.
Yes, every curve is flattened into a corner. Every letter has to fit within the mathematical rules of the grid.
So it's essentially architectural text.
That's a great way to put it. It blurs the line between language and structure.
Yeah.
And because it's so rigid, it becomes a visual puzzle. You can't just glance at geometric Kufic and read it instantly the way you read a standard font.
It takes work.
You have to slow down, you have to trace the lines with your eyes. You have to actively decode it.
Which is brilliant for a book about belief.
It really is.
It's almost forcing the reader to engage. The cover is saying, this topic is not going to be a quick, passive experience. You have to put in the work to decode it.
Exactly.
But what absolutely blows my mind about this specific medallion is what the text actually says when you do decode it.
Right. Is the word Allah repeated exactly 8 times.
8 times. And the words are interlocked, forming this continuous, unbroken geometric pattern.
Seamless.
And they are all radiating outward from a bright, glowing yellow sunburst right in the dead center of the octagon.
Let's break down the mechanics of why this is such a masterpiece of visual communication, entirely separate from any theological meaning.
Okay, hit me.
Think about what radial symmetry does to the optic nerve.
Radial symmetry being a design that radiates out from a central point, like a bicycle wheel or a snowflake.
Exactly. When the human eye encounters radial symmetry, it naturally seeks the anchor point.
It wants to find the middle.
Right. Your eye traces the sharp maze-like angles of the Kufic script on the outer edge, but all paths, all 8 repetitions of the word act as visual funnels.
Oh, wow.
They lead your eye relentlessly back to that single glowing yellow center. You literally cannot look away from the middle.
It pulls you in. It's almost hypnotic.
And look at the thematic resonance of that. The book is titled Belief in Allah.
Right.
The core foundational tenet of that belief is singularity, the oneness of the divine.
I see where you're going with this.
The graphic designer didn't need to write a paragraph explaining the concept of singularity. They just built a visual machine that forces your brain to physically experience the concept of singularity.
Every line leads to one point.
Yes.
And the repetition of the number 8 is fascinating, too. 8 sides of the octagon, the word repeated 8 times.
Symmetrical perfection.
It creates a sense of a continuous loop. There is no top or bottom, no beginning, and no end. It implies infinity.
It's a profound example of form perfectly matching content. Why use a simple, literal illustration of a person praying? That's a narrative image. This geometric medallion is conceptual. It represents the abstract, structural nature of belief itself.
And I just noticed something else.
What's that?
That glowing yellow sunburst in the very center of the medallion.
Yeah.
It's the exact same color as the yellow box holding the number 1 at the top of the cover.
Now that is how you tie a visual composition together.
It has to be intentional, right? The yellow of the foundational volume number is linked directly to the glowing center of the divine name. It subconsciously suggests that starting at volume 1 is the pathway to that central illumination.
It's a visual thesis. The green is the foundation, the tradition, the earth.
Right.
The Kufic octagon is the rigorous architectural structure of study, and the yellow is the energy, the truth, the ultimate focus.
We are extracting an incredibly dense philosophical narrative, and we haven't even opened the book yet.
We can't open the book. That's the whole point of this thought experiment. We are locked out of the text, so we are forced to realize that the cover is a text.
It really is.
And the cover has one more story to tell us, down at the very bottom.
The fine print.
Yes. This is where the conceptual, ethereal ideas of belief and geometry hit the physical reality of manufacturing. The publishing footprint.
Let's look at the metadata. Down at the bottom left, we have the publisher's information.
Right.
It reads, Dar Al-Nafaes for publishing and distribution, and it notes the location as Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
Next to it is a really distinct logo. It's golden, and it looks like a crescent moon, or perhaps a stylized lantern holding a flame or a drop of light inside it.
So the name Dar Al-Nafaes roughly translates to the House of Precious Things, or the House of Treasures.
Oh, I love that. The House of Precious Things. It makes the book sound like an artifact you'd find in a vault.
It elevates the physical object. And that logo, whether you read it as a crescent or a lantern, again reinforces this overarching theme of light.
It's everywhere.
We saw it in the top banner, we saw it in the yellow sunburst of the medallion, and now we see it in the publisher's colophon at the bottom. It's a totally unified design language.
And knowing it's published in Jordan gives us geographical weight.
It grounds it.
It reminds us that before this became a corrupted blank PDF on our screens, it was a physical object.
It existed in the real world.
It was printed on a mechanical press. Someone had to load the green ink. Someone had to bind the pages with glue, box them up, put them on a truck in Jordan, and distribute them. It grounds the concept in reality.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the most crucial piece of metadata is sitting quietly in the bottom right corner.
Right.
A tiny note that completely shifts our understanding of this artifact.
The edition note. It says new and revised edition.
Think about the mechanical implications of those 4 words.
Okay.
Even without the internal pages, that phrase tells us that this text has a history. It is not a static object that was written once and carved into stone.
It's a living document.
Yes.
It means this book has existed in the world before. People bought the first edition. They read it.
And then something happened. Why does a book get revised?
Maybe they found a typo.
Or perhaps the author received feedback from peers. Perhaps they found a flaw in their own argument, or their understanding of the topic deepened over time, necessitating a rewrite.
That happens all the time in academia.
Or purely from a publishing standpoint.
Yeah.
Perhaps the book was just so incredibly popular that the plates wore out and the publisher decided to invest in a completely new, updated typesetting.
Whatever the reason, new and revised implies an active relationship between the author, the text, and the audience.
It does.
It's actually a very humbling statement to put on a book about foundational belief.
How do you mean?
Well, the subject matter belief in God is presented as absolute, perfect, immutable, right?
Yes.
But the human attempt to explain it is inherently flawed and requires constant revision.
Oh, that's profound.
The author is essentially admitting, I tried to explain this perfectly the first time, but I realized I could do it better. I had to revise my words. It implies a relentless pursuit of accuracy.
That's a beautiful way to frame it. The pursuit of explaining truth is an iterative process.
It never really ends.
It requires continuous refinement. And the publisher, Dar Al-Nafaes, deemed this text valuable enough and the market demand high enough to warrant investing the capital into a brand new printing process.
I want you, the listener, to think about this in your own life. Think about the textbooks or the reference manuals you use.
Think about the editions.
If you buy an anatomy textbook and it's the 14th edition, what does that tell you? It tells you the core subject matter is vital, but the nuances are constantly being sharpened. It tells you the text is alive.
Which makes the reality of our source material all the more tragic.
Here we go. The elephant in the room.
We are looking at a cover that proudly announces it contains the most updated, refined, careful articulation of this author's life's work.
The ultimate version.
The culmination of their revisions. And we have absolutely zero access to it. We have the label on the bottle, but the bottle is completely empty.
So let's finally confront the void. We've spent all this time forensically dismantling the brilliant design, the authoritative text, the iterative history of this cover.
We've wrung it dry.
And then we swipe to the next image in our digital stack.
And we hit the blank page.
It's just a white rectangle. So you swipe again. Page 3, blank.
Page 4, blank.
All the way to page 31. Every single one of them is completely devoid of information. There is no title page, no copyright page, no table of contents, no introduction, no text.
Now, earlier you said you wanted to just delete the file because it was obviously a scanner error.
Yeah, a glitch.
And you were right, it is a technical glitch. But I want to propose that we treat this stack of images, the dense cover followed by the 30 blank pages, as a unified experience.
Wait, you want to analyze a glitch?
I want to analyze our experience of the glitch. In philosophy, this is called phenomenology.
No.
It's the study of how we experience things, rather than just what the things are objectively. Objectively, this is a broken PDF.
Right.
But phenomenologically, the experience of reading a profound cover and then hitting a wall of blankness raises an incredibly important question about how we consume information in the modern digital world.
Okay, I'm listening. Walk me through the phenomenology of the blank page.
Think about our digital habits today. We are constantly, endlessly presented with striking headlines, beautifully designed thumbnails, and authoritative titles.
It's exhausting.
We scroll through our social media feeds, and we see the covers of 1,000 different articles, books, and videos a day.
Right. We are bombarded by covers.
And what do? We read the headline, the banner text. We note the author's credentials or the source's verified checkmark, the doctor title.
Date check the source,
We
yeah.
see the engaging graphic, the geometric medallion. And then what happens?
Oh, wow. I see where you're going. Most of the time, we stop right there.
Exactly. We don't click the link. We don't read the article. We don't watch the hour-long video.
We just keep scrolling.
But, and this is the crucial part, we feel informed just by looking at the cover.
Oh, that's so true.
We internalize the headline as knowledge. We feel like we've absorbed the substance of the argument just by acknowledging the existence of the package.
That is terrifyingly accurate. I do that all the time. I'll see a headline about a new scientific study, I'll see the graph in the thumbnail, and I'll think, got it. Coffee is good for you again, without ever reading the methodology.
In a very real practical sense, for the vast majority of the information we encounter daily, the internal pages are blank to us because we never bother to open them.
We live in a world of covers.
This digital artifact we are analyzing today, this scanner glitch, is simply literalizing that modern condition. The book is purely conceptual to us. It exists only as a promise.
It forces us to realize what we're actually doing. The glitch is holding up a mirror.
It is.
It's like my analogy of the perfectly preserved door from the beginning of the show. The door is real. The intricate carvings on the door are real. The promise of the library behind it is real.
But the room is empty.
But when you open it and find an empty room, you realize you've been entirely satisfied just staring at doors all day.
And when you are confronted with the empty room, it turns a passive act into an active one. When you sit with a blank page, especially after being hyped up by such a powerful, authoritative cover, the silence is aggressive.
It demands something from you.
You can't just passively consume it. You start projecting your own thoughts, your own assumptions onto that empty white space.
It reminds me of artists who intentionally use empty space.
Oh, like who?
Like John Cage's famous musical piece, 4'33".
Right.
Where the pianist sits at the piano and does not play a single note for 4 minutes and 33 seconds. The music just becomes the ambient noise of the room, the coughing of the audience, the uncomfortable shuffling.
Yes.
Or Robert Rauschenberg's white paintings, which are just blank canvases that capture the shadows of the people walking past them.
Let me stop you right there because I think that's a dangerous comparison.
Why? It's the same concept, isn't it? Blankness is art.
Because Cage and Rauschenberg made highly intentional, avant-garde artistic choices to force their audience to confront silence or emptiness.
Okay, true.
The publisher of this book did not. Dar Al-Nafaes did not print 30 blank pages as a profound commentary on the nature of belief.
Oh.
A machine broke. We cannot pretend this was an intentional artistic statement by Dr. Al-Ashqar.
Okay, fair point. I'm romanticizing a jammed Xerox machine. I'm assigning artistic genius to a paper jam.
You are. But, and this is the crucial distinction that brings us back to phenomenology, just because the creation of the void wasn't intentional doesn't mean our experience of it isn't profound.
Because we're the ones experiencing it.
We are still left holding the blank pages, and we still have to figure out what to do with them.
So what do we do with them? If we can't treat it as intentional art and we can't read the text, what is the value of the void?
The value is in the questions the void forces us to ask.
What kind of questions?
Well, the cover told us this is volume 1 of Belief in Allah. So, confronted with page 1 being blank, you have to ask yourself, what would Dr. Ashqar have written here? How would he define the very first step of belief? If you had to fill in that blank page based solely on the strict, geometric, illuminated framework established by the cover, where would you start?
You have to write it yourself, mentally.
The void forces you to interrogate your own understanding of the topic.
That's a really intense exercise because, as you pointed out earlier, the cover established that this isn't a casual topic.
Yeah.
It's a foundational, rigorously structured argument. And suddenly the responsibility to supply that structure is dumped entirely on the reader.
It's fascinating how frustrated we feel initially, isn't it? When we receive this source material, our first reaction was annoyance.
Definitely annoyance.
We are so addicted to having answers handed to us in neat bulleted lists. We want the text. We want the arguments spelled out clearly so we can either agree with it or comfortably disagree with it and move on.
We want the shortcut. We want the author to do the heavy lifting.
Yes. But the void denies us the shortcut. It forces us to linger on the threshold.
It slows you down.
By depriving us of the text, this broken file forced us to spend the last 45 minutes analyzing the precise emotional impact of a solid green background.
Which we never would have done otherwise.
It forced us to understand the mathematical beauty of an 8-sided Kufic medallion. It made us appreciate the sheer density of meaning packed into the presentation of knowledge before the knowledge is even delivered.
It slows everything down. Scroll to page 2, blank. Breathe. Scroll to page 3, blank. Breathe.
Exactly.
What are you bringing to this empty space? What are your preconceptions? It really highlights the fact that reading is never a one-way street.
It's a conversation.
A book isn't just a vending machine where you put in your attention and facts fall out. Reading is a collaboration between the text and the reader's mind. And when the text is missing, you realize how much of the work your own mind was supposed to be doing anyway.
And there is a specific poignancy to this happening with a book about belief.
Because belief is so personal.
Because belief, by its very nature, is an inherently internal, invisible architecture. You cannot put a physical piece of belief on a laboratory table and measure it.
That's a great point. You can only observe the outward manifestations of it.
Exactly. You can look at the covers of belief, the rituals, the architecture of the mosques or churches, the declared statements, the charitable actions.
The external stuff.
But the internal reality of belief, the actual lived experience inside a person's mind and heart, is always, to an outside observer, somewhat of a blank page.
Wow.
It cannot be fully captured in a PDF scan. It has to be experienced.
Okay, I see why you defended the phenomenological approach. The cover gives you the structure, the geometry, the authority. But the actual 30 pages of blankness, that represents the internal silent experience of the individual.
And the fact that the cover reminds us this is a new and revised edition adds a wonderful layer of irony to our experience of the blankness.
How so?
It's as if the publisher went to great lengths, undergoing rounds of revisions and proofs, to ensure that this silence, this void, is the most accurate, perfectly formatted, error-free void possible.
Oh, that's hilarious and deep at the same time.
It's a pristine emptiness.
The ultimate final draft is just a blank page.
Mm-hmm.
You know, let's go back to my analogy of the 101 level college course because I think it perfectly encapsulates this whole bizarre journey.
Let's hear it.
Imagine you walk into the first day of that foundational 101 class. You sit down at your desk. The professor walks in and hands out the syllabus.
Okay.
The cover of the syllabus is stunning. It's got a solid green background. It's embossed with beautiful gold geometry. It has the professor's credentials clearly printed and a banner establishing the strict rules of the course.
Very intimidating.
You are intimidated, but you are ready. You open the syllabus to see what you'll be studying for the next 4 months, and all 30 pages of the packet are completely blank.
How would the students react?
There would be absolute panic. Confusion. People would be checking their neighbors' packets to see if theirs was misprinted. They would be raising their hands, demanding to know what the reading assignments are, what the test dates are.
Because they want the transaction. They want to know exactly what hoops to jump through to get the grade.
Exactly. But imagine if the professor just stands there at the front of the room, lets the panic subside, and says, "There is no misprint. The structure is set. The topic is belief. The methodology is illuminated. But the content is what you're going to discover inside yourselves over the next semester. Fill the pages."
It would completely subvert the transactional nature of education.
It would.
It would be terrifying, but it would probably be the most memorable class of their lives because it asks them to stop being passive consumers and start being active participants.
And that is exactly what this broken digital file did for us today. Let's circle back and look at the whole journey we've just been on, because it really is remarkable how far we've traveled on a single page of graphic design.
It's been a long trip.
We started with what was undeniably a mistake, a digital error. A stack of sources that was mathematically 97% blank space.
Essentially nothing.
But by refusing to just throw it away, by committing to the deep dive and acting as forensic analysts, look at what we've uncovered.
We found a lot in that 3%.
We took a single visual artifact, a green cover on a glowing screen.
And we broke it down.
From a simple banner of text, we extracted a methodology of illumination, exploring how language can function as a navigational flashlight in a dark room.
From a utilitarian yellow box holding a number 1, we unpacked the psychology of the Volume 1 commitment, the audacity of starting a series, and the necessity of establishing a baseline before building a complex argument.
From the bold title and the author's academic credential, we saw how a publisher bridges the gap between divine subject matter and rigorous human academia.
And then we moved past the words into the visual machinery.
Right.
We broke down the mechanics of the color green, how it provides a stable, low-strain psychological stage. We decoded that incredible centerpiece, the octagonal Kufic medallion.
That was wild.
We saw how it wasn't just a decoration, but an architectural puzzle. We explored how radial symmetry physically forces the optic nerve inward, visually mimicking the very concept of singular belief and infinite focus, drawing the eye relentlessly into that glowing yellow center.
We even wrung a narrative out of the tiny metadata at the bottom.
A house of precious things.
The golden lantern logo of Dar Al-Nafaes, grounding this ethereal concept in a physical printing press in Jordan. And that crucial phrase, new and revised edition, which transformed our understanding of the text from a static monolith into a living, breathing document that requires continuous refinement by human hands.
We extracted a massive narrative about methodology, visual psychology, and the iterative nature of truth-seeking, all from a fraction of a second's worth of presentation. And then finally we confronted the void.
The 30 blank pages. We turned a technical glitch into a reflection on our own modern condition.
We had to.
We acknowledged how we constantly skim surfaces, read the covers, look at the thumbnails, and assume we understand the depths. We realized that we live in a world of covers, and that sometimes being forced to stare at an empty page is exactly the mirror we need.
In a world drowning in endless streams of data, endless pages of text, endless opinions and arguments shouting for our attention, encountering 30 perfectly blank pages might actually be a rare gift.
A break in the noise.
It's a moment of enforced silence, a break in the noise that forces you to listen to your own thoughts.
It takes us right back to that locked door in the empty library. We spent the whole episode admiring the craftsmanship of the door, the brass handle, the hinges. We opened it, found nothing, and realized the door itself was the lesson.
It was always about the door.
Which leaves us with a final thought to ponder as we wrap up this incredibly unique deep dive. We've talked about how the cover promises a journey and how the blank pages force you to reflect on your own internal architecture.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We've discussed the mechanics of design and the psychology of reading, but I want you, our listener, to think about this. What if receiving a title page with no subsequent text isn't just a reflection of our digital habits, but is actually the ultimate learning exercise for any profound topic?
It's a daunting thought.
We are given the destination, the concept of singular belief. We are given the starting line, Volume 1. But because the pages are completely blank, the responsibility of filling in that vast empty space with meaning is no longer on the author, Dr. Al-Ashqar.
It's not on the publisher either.
It is no longer on the publisher in Jordan. It is placed entirely on you. You turn that heavy brass handle, you step into the empty room, and the only question left is, what are you going to build in there?